Welcome to the Art of Dress. Today, I'm happy to start a new series on line, which is to say, how does the cut of your clothes transform into different lines? And specifically, we're going to start with elaborate natural and refined gammon. But I'm also introducing for the first time style astrology. So thank you for coming and for subscribing. Today we're going to begin the discussion around line, and what I'd like to show you is how line connects styles. So the first style we're going to look at is the elaborate natural, which is Chanel Iman. And if you watched the style profile for the elaborate natural for Chanel, you will remember that she wears long lines and that her focal point is below her waist. It's actually at the top of her leg. And that she, perhaps you remember that she wears fabrics that are very flowy and very soft. And so when you see an outfit like this, what you can see is that when she's walking and there's wind, her garments are going to hang completely differently than they would if she were standing still, because of those fabric qualities, flowiness, and which is to say an unbalanced weave, and also the fact that they are so soft. And so you can also see this in her sleeves. So the first thing I just want to point out is that the sleeve and the pant and the skirt, the line is always the same. And here what you're seeing is actually a palazzo line that starts out curving at the top of her shoulder or at the top of her leg and then goes in a continuous curve. So here we also have the refined gammon. And the refined gammon and the elaborate natural are so different. And if you look at this dress shows a lot of things about the refined gammon, which is really very interesting. For one thing, you'll notice that there's a lot going on. And that is because not only does she wear a print, but she wears a medium-sized print. So it actually has quite a lot of impact. And then another thing you'll notice is that her torso is very fitted, but she has an open sleeve and a more open skirt. But there's also a number of other things that are going on. One thing is that the way that the line of the sleeve is connected is with sort of an encasing, a French seam inside, so it looks like a halter line. And then also you'll see the same thing at the bottom of her sleeve and at the bottom of her dress. So this adds detail. And then another thing that shortens her line is that the fabric is used in like panels. So you have flower, and then you have black with just the leaves, and then you have flowers and black with just the leaves. So that you have bands of print. And so each time that happens, it actually divides her line into smaller lines. So the refined gammon uses a very short line with quite a lot of detail. So let me take you back for a moment to the style wheel for Yin Yang. So this is showing all of the style symbols arranged around the wheel. I did a video about this, so you can watch the video if you want to remind yourself. But just in summary, I will remind you that so the styles that are on the top of this wheel, that is if you drew a line horizontally, there are styles on the top and there are styles on the bottom. If you're on the top of this wheel, it means that your focal point is high on your body, above your waist. And if you are below that horizontal middle line, it means that your focal point is below your waist on the bottom of the wheel, and that your lines are long, not short. So short and also curved lines on the top, generally long and also straight lines on the bottom, and this conforms to where your focal point is. So the two styles that we're looking at, the refined gammon and the elaborate natural, are perhaps the most opposite of all the styles, of all the style pairs, because you can see that you could draw lines all the way around this wheel. And also notice that every time you do that, you are connecting an alpha style, like the refined gammon, with an omega style, like the elaborate natural. And another thing I would just draw your attention to is the style symbols themselves, because look at the refined gammon style symbol. So all those curvy lines, and the spiral in the center is very short. And then at the bottom, you have the elaborate natural, where the lines are lengthened out and very straight. So from the outside, you would say that you could not be more opposite than if you wore these two styles. So let's start by looking at sleeves and see what the sleeves tell us. So the first thing we see with Chanel Iman here is this incredibly iconic image. She's wearing a John Galliano outfit, and she has the impulse to open out her arms like this. This posture, this stance, she does it with her whole body sometimes. She does it with her arms and her legs. And she absolutely illustrates with her movement and with her holding her arms like this, sort of the flowy nature of her style. But if you look at that sleeve, it might be easier to see on the right. You will notice that this is not a puff sleeve. This is a sleeve that opens out slowly, gradually. Under the arm, it's quite fitted. And then it is a palazzo line. It's a short curvature, but it is a wide version. The width, look at the difference between where her hand is and where her sleeve is. It's very wide sleeve. But it also demonstrates something about her style, which has this enormous amount of flow available to it, even though it's an omega style, but it's the least omega of all. It's the least opened out. Look at how if she put her sleeve down, her arm down, it would be hanging just straight. And look at how the rest of her body, it really forms like that number one, which is her style inspiration. And yet she's using that palazzo line in her sleeve. So let's compare that sleeve to this sleeve. Micah Janelli Refined Gammon. Notice how it's fitted under the arm and there's no poof. It's fitted at the shoulder. So it starts out and then it forms this completely gentle curve, although in this case it's very alpha, very tight to her arm. Not tight compared to, say, a totally fitted sleeve. That's why she's the least alpha of the styles. But it is still completely fitted compared to Chanel Iman's sleeve in the last picture. And there you see how it gradually curves all the way down her arm. That is a palazzo line in her sleeve, the identical cut. Just one is alpha, one is omega. Here's another example with Chanel Iman. Now this time, it's very easy to see the curvature, but this time, notice that it's nowhere near as wide. And why is that? Well, partly is that the fabric isn't quite flowy enough. Look at her skirt and how it doesn't really hang quite straight, even though she's not really moving very much at all. And also notice that that she's got it pulled in to her wrist. So the elaborate natural isn't showing a super wide silhouette. It's the least omega. So when the fabric is not going to conform to that, being able to just drop flowingly, like completely loosely flow from like fluidly, that you call a fluid drape, I guess would be the word. And when it's pulled into the sleeve, it's often far less open because she doesn't want to show this hugely omega line, but it is still the same exact cut. And here again, what you see with Micah Janelli Refined Gammon is that this fabric is a little bit soft for her, so it's not quite as firm as she often wears, but the cuff kind of saves it and helps her hold that curvature of line all the way down the sleeve. And in this case, you can see that it looks very tight, okay, very, very conforming to her arm, but still the sleeve saves it because she's not the most alpha. Now we can move to the pant, and with Chanel Iman, this is a true palazzo cut in the pant, and you can see how it doesn't hang, it's not wide at the hip, it's not actually even wide at the top of the leg unless she's moving. Like on the right hand side, you can see where her leg is moving, and on the left hand side where it's just standing pretty still, so it's very restrained, and then it opens out at the bottom. And in this case, her fabric is quite heavy but also quite fluid in its drape. And then now we see Micah Janelli in the refined gammon opening out again and opening out all the way down the leg to the bottom, but it's still quite restrained compared to Chanel Iman, but it's the same exact cut. Now, one more time, and this time, because you can see the very base of her leg, you can see how her fabric wants to flow out. When she's moving, she gets a sweep going with her fabric. And it's really very effective for her because it actually brings her into this feeling of almost like majesty and flourish, right? But when you see a Micah Janelli with, yes, a far more restrained silhouette. And yes, she's wearing the same cut to her pant. It still opens out all the way down to the bottom of her leg. With her coats, you often find that she'll really show movement and show that same flow and that same sweep. And so what you're seeing is almost exactly this, what you're seeing is exactly the same kind of feeling to the style that they're both getting, even though in many ways they are so different. I'll just show you one more example now of something else that the two styles do. So here you see Chanel Iman, and notice that she is achieving her long silhouette, her long line in her silhouette, not too omega. It's pretty connected to her body. It hangs really straight in her skirt, even though there's movement all the way down, because it doesn't have as much drape. But she is showing another thing, and that is she's showing an awareness or a sympathy for the focal point, the style focal point of the refined gammon, Micah Janelli, and that is the empire waistline. And in fact, this is how the elaborate natural achieves a long line that is not extra long. There's only one set of styles that wears the extra long line, and Chanel Iman wears the long line. She is not an exception. She conforms to the rules of yin and yang. She is a yang style. So she doesn't wear the extra long line. She wears a long line, and the empire waistline cuts her line for her and stops it from becoming extra long. But marking the focal point of her opposite style is the exact same thing that Micah Janelli does all the time. And here you see that top of the leg is the focal point of the elaborate natural. And she uses this as a way to keep her silhouette tight to her body until she reaches the point where the palazzo line begins. And that shows you, that's why she's still an alpha style. Very alpha through her torso, and then alpha at the top of her sleeve, and alpha at the top of her leg as well, through this tight silhouette here with a sort of shadow focal point, I call it. It's the focal point of her opposite style. And of course, her lines are still really short because look at the scallops down her sleeve, cutting the line, and also the way her print is used again, cutting her line. And then she's got the actual use of this sort of torso emphasis that finishes at the top of the leg is to cut her line one more time. So she's still completely in her style, even wearing firm fabrics, everything, but she's still using her shadow focal point, or the focal point of her opposite style. Now, if I show you the total silhouette for the elaborate natural, here you can see that there's so many things going on that are indicative of not just the cut of the sleeve and the cut of the skirt, both showing palazzo line. Also, she's got her horizontal neckline going. She's got the alternate focal point through the V. It ends right at the empire waistline. She's got her true focal point marked with a slit. She's got the high-low emphasis with a skirt, which is using the differentiation of space forward and back. And she's got also the flowiness that we talked about. But one more thing is no one else can wear this unbelievable simplicity and look fantastic. So she is in every way, well, she doesn't have texture in there. So that's really the only thing that's missing. But in so many aspects, to make up for it, she's wearing one of her absolute best colors. So part of her rainbow palette of colors, her 7 most incredible colors. And eventually we'll get to color as well. But she is really absolutely demonstrating her style in this dress, the feeling of her style. And likewise, Micah Janelli is doing something, again, so unique that shows her style in so many ways. To start with, notice how she's using the one shoulder because she's a line style and she uses side-to-side differentiation of space. And she's got this extreme palazzo because in this case, she's using a really soft fabric. So when she does that, she has a tendency to go far more extreme. But she's also posing for this picture sitting down. And that is because that allows her to show her line and control her line, even though it's very soft. And so she's really demonstrating her feeling of her style by making up for the softness of the fabric by sitting down and showing the line of the style. And there you see that palazzo line to her sleeve one more time. You also see that through the way her bodice is constructed, she's got her focal point at her empire waistline. She's got her shadow focal point, the focal point of the elaborate natural, through the flared skirt coming at the top of her legs. And then she's got the flow going that is indicative of this pair of styles. So now let me take you back one more time to our wheel. So here is the wheel, the same Yin Yang Wheel with the same exact styles. And this time, rather than show the style symbols, I am showing you the planet symbols. So the planet for refined gammon, the top of that dark line, and the elaborate natural, the bottom of that dark line, is Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of wisdom and logic. So what does logic have to do with these two styles, and how do they show logic? How does logic inspire them in its way? Or how does logic stand behind what they do? So think about what logic is. Let's take the forming of a concept. Logic is used to connect things and form a concept. Let's take chair. A chair is a place where you sit. Now, if you think about all the different chairs that you know, they are so very different. Some are, I don't even need to tell you, some are wide seats, some are narrow, some sit you straight up, some have you partially reclining. They're different in their some are fabric, some are leather, some are wood, some are metal, some are ceramic. They can be so incredibly different. High from the floor, low from the floor, the backs are different, the seats are different, so many differences. But we unite them in the concept chair. We use logic to form concepts because we find what is the same, even though there are many, many differences. These two styles have perhaps the most number of differences of any two styles. And yet, the logic shows you their similarities. And that is through the palazzo cut to their sleeve, the palazzo cut to their pant, the palazzo cut to their overall silhouette. And that cut is also combined with one more thing, and that is that flow, that feeling of flow, of that dramatic flow that both of them have. And you see it in the way they hold their bodies, refined gammon, Micah Janelli, elaborate natural, Chanel Iman. You see it in the way they move. You see it in the clothing that they choose with their both incredible senses of style. So the planet of logic inspires Jupiter, inspires refined gammon and elaborate natural. And for that reason, they have the same planet of line, and they are style pairs. Even in all their oppositeness, they are style pairs. They are linked through their planet, which is Jupiter, the planet of logic. So in summary, Chanel Iman, and a silhouette that doesn't conform to the body. In her case, it basically forms the number 1, where she has a focal point that is below her waist at the top of her leg, and her fabrics are flowy and soft and usually heavy, although There's a wheel that the largest, the greatest, the most extreme can also sometimes go to the least. And so she finds a way often to make very lightweight fabrics work for her through a more open line. And here you see the flowiness of Jupiter in Chanel Iman. And likewise, in Micah Janelli, refined gammon, tight silhouette at the top of her body. Her torso is always quite fitted, almost always, at least above the waist. Below the waist, usually very fitted. She tries as much as possible, opening out at the top of her leg. And with the palazzo cut to her sleeve, to her skirt, to her pant, you can see that she still, with the way she moves, gives you the same exact feeling of flow and the same exact connection that to the majesty of Jupiter that is evident in both Elaborate Natural, Chanel Iman, and Refined Gammon, Micah Janelli. So thank you very much. Thank you for sharing this with me. It is my pleasure to show you this, and so much fun to illustrate for you what you might call astrology of style through the planets. And I look forward to sharing with you again. Next time, we're going to look at we're starting from the middle this time, the least omega and the least alpha, and we're going to go one more open. The second least omega, that would be that would be refined classic, and the second least alpha, that will be elaborate classic. So thank you for coming and for subscribing one more time, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.